Okay, we're live.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And I'd like to welcome members and officers to this Cabinet meeting and also welcome anyone watching online via our YouTube channel. Before we get started tonight, members and probably the whole of North Hertfordshire will be aware that there's an empty seat in this chamber this evening, which should have been occupied by Councillor Judy Billing, who sadly passed away at the end of November. Judy served as a councillor for Burton Ward in Hitchin for over 40 years, and she represented Hitchin North at Hertfordshire County Council since 2013. She was also our Cabinet portfolio holder for community engagement and was one of the most passionate advocates I've known for communities and people, and is very sadly missed. Members will know that Judy's funeral takes place on Friday at 2 p.m. at St Mary's Church in Hitchin, and there'll be a reception afterwards. Probably, I think it's at Hermitage, on Hermitage Road in Hitchin as well, for those wishing to come along and pay their respects. There will, of course, be the usual formal, it's not usual, it's never usual when something like this happens, but there will be the space for formal tributes at full council on Monday evening for those wishing to make them. However, if anyone present tonight wants to say a few brief words, I'd be happy to allow that under the circumstances. No. Councillor Albert.
Since Judy would expect me to be brief this evening, bearing in mind the agenda, I think the one thing I'd say now is I think that, and that's what I said to the Hitchin committee the other night, Judy's legacy will live long, and it will live long in through the things that she, as a member of the opposition, then helped to create, the making sure we keep area committees, the brilliant councillor surgery we have every month in Hitchin Marketplace, and the town talks that we have before the Hitchin committee, and obviously that's replicated around the district. So many of those things and so many other things like Holocaust Memorial Day and other things are Judy's legacy. This council will have a chance to say more, but I just miss her every day. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I think I'd like us to take 1 minute of silence to reflect on Judy's contribution and our friendship and gratitude to her. Thank you. And I believe James will take us through the usual announcements.
Thank you, Chair. So I will just firstly confirm the officers joining us remotely this evening to ensure they can hear us and we can hear them. So we've got Joe Dufficy.
Present.
Thank you. Anne Banner.
Present.
Geraldine Goodwin.
Present.
Great. Martin Lawrence.
Present.
Thank you. Anthony Roach.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Rob Orchard.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. David Martins Hesp.
Present.
Thank you. And we're joined by David Airy as well.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. And we have Don Middleton on the IT support this evening. So for procedure, if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live, at which point it will turn red and you can speak. Voting, when requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on the microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? Nope. I'll now hand back to Councillor Dennis Harbour.
Thank you very much. Item number 1 this evening are apologies for absence. We have no apologies for absence. Everybody that can be here is here. Item number 2 are the minutes of the Cabinet meetings on the 13th of September, 25th of October and 2nd of November 2022. Before I propose these minutes, just a note to members, if you have an amendment that relates to any part 2 items on those minutes, could you hold on to that until we consider the part 2 items later this evening, just to avoid us needing to put the meeting into a closed session more than once during the space of one meeting. Okay, so barring any part 2 amendments, is everybody happy with the part 1 content of those 3-minute meetings? And I will propose those. And seconder? Oh yeah, I have to. Yes, Councillor Albert.
Happy to second.
I don't know why I thought I had control of your microphone. I don't do it. That's James's job. Thank you. Excellent. In that case, moving swiftly onwards, notification of other business. There is none. Chair's announcements in accordance with. Oh, shall we vote on them? Do we have to vote? Fine. Let's vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. That was really worth slowing me down for. Procedure all the time. Speaking of procedure, item number 4, Chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the North Herts Council website and the film recording via the North Herts Council YouTube channel. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that, as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out various roles and tasks for the benefit of the district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the agenda pack. And comfort breaks will be taken at a suitable time in the meeting if required or if members indicate the need. Item number 5, public participation. There is none this evening. And item number 6, items referred from other committees. There are a number of these and we will take those with the main cabinet agenda items. And I'm very grateful that the chairs of Overview and Scrutiny and the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee join us tonight to add a little extra detail to those referrals. So finally, item number 7, Council Tax Reduction Scheme, and I shall invite Councillor Albert to present first.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. What I intend to do here is do just a brief introduction and also then to introduce David Airy, our consultant who's been working with us and officers on this, just to, I think, give a little bit of background and also around what other councils are doing. I think it's right to start off, first of all, thanks to Joe Duffield and her team, particularly Anne Banner, Geraldine Goodwin, and all the colleagues who've done an absolutely huge amount of work on this through the consultation process and coming up with the papers here. The key aims are set out in the paper. Particularly, they're about providing the greatest support to those who need it most. And I think you can see from the paper that has, I think, been delivered with increases in entitlement for over 1,500 people, and particularly those at the bottom end of our income ranges. And I think that is a welcome development to the scheme. And I think the scheme has received a lot of support, both around in the consultation, but also from organisations like Citizens Advice, who've both sort of quality assured and provided comments on it. I think it's also perhaps we could touch on is that we do recognise that there will in any scheme the importance is about managing the transition. So recognising that there are a significant number of people who are better off, or at least the same amount, but indeed better off, and over 81% of those are in those categories. There is a recognition that actually in achieving that banded scheme, that we do have some people who won't be entitled in future or will have a reduction. And so one of the key things that we'll do, and the further piece of work that we'll be doing following, I think, this meeting, and obviously as we go towards the full council meeting, is looking at our discretionary sports scheme to manage that transition, particularly for those who are experiencing exceptional hardship, and we will be considering those cases on an individual basis. And I think that's a really important thing for us to manage to do. But if I could just sort of perhaps pass over to David, obviously to thank him for his input to this, and perhaps if he'd just like to obviously provide some additional flavour and background for Cabinet colleagues tonight. David, over to you, if James can.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, and thanks for the invite to just give some background, really. Yeah, my name's David Airy. I work with a company called ACS. We provide a lot of support to local authorities, 250 local authorities, and one of the main areas we do is council tax reduction. The scheme that's been developed by yourself and your officers, a lot of work's gone into that from your officers' perspective, really fundamentally changes the way we deal with council tax reduction for working age. Just to give you a little bit of background on the history of it, council tax reduction came in 2013. It replaced the old council tax benefits scheme. And really, to be brutally honest, all schemes run by local authorities now need to be revamped because of the rollout of universal credit. The scheme that's been developed by ourselves and your officers particularly does two things, really. It simplifies the scheme for working age, and also it provides, as Councillor said, significant more support as well, which is good. Just to let you know what's happening around the country, we think certainly by 2023-24, the majority of authorities will have changed their working age scheme significantly, in the same way as you are in North Herts. The scheme for pension age, we cannot change. That's prescribed by the government. But let's say the direction your scheme's going will actually be good and hold you well for certainly the foreseeable future anyway.
Right. Thank you very much, both. I think I will also, if that's sort of mostly completed your presentation, I'm aware that we've got a referral from the Finance Audit and Risk Committee on this as well. So Terry, do you want to give us some additional background on that item?
Yes, Chair. We had quite a considerable debate about this and exchanges, particularly about the scheme of the transition and how long it would last and how much money it would cost. But overall, that was an area we concentrated on. But the committee was very happy with the proposal of the scheme, and we fully support it and refer it to you.
Thank you very much. Do any colleagues have questions on this item? Yes, Ruth.
Just one question, hopefully you can answer it. So it talks about major precepting authorities, but doesn't mention parish councils. So I just wanted to know if there's any impact, or how will it impact parish councils, this change?
That doesn't, I believe. But Joe, would you like just to confirm that?
Yeah, I believe you're correct, but I will just double check that with Jerry as well, who's on the call.
Yeah, good evening. We do the council tax reduction does have a bearing on the parish councils, but only by a very small amount. Every year when we set the council tax base, there is an element of council tax reduction within their parish calculation, but it's such a small amount now that it would be very minimal to them.
Yeah.
One of the things the budget will agree is that we provide around a £38,000 thing traditionally going forward, and that's something that's been approved by the council at the budget as support to the parish councils, and will be in our future budget as well, proposal for it.
All right. Okay. Any more questions? No, I'm not seeing anyone indicating. In that case, we've got a number of recommendations, and then also a note that we're going to refer this to full council as well, I believe. So the do you want me to take the recommendations and then do the referral, or can I do it all in one? Do it all at once. So we'll take all 3 recommendations plus the 2 points that we're going to refer to council in one go, if colleagues are happy. So I'm happy to propose that. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah.
Happy to second or move. I think
Oh,
I probably
you
moved
probably
it,
moved it. I'll
actually.
second, whichever way it is. And can we move to the vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you. And next I have the climate change strategy 2022 to 2027. Councillor Jarvis to present first, and I think there was also an O&S referral on this as well. So Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks. This is an update of the existing climate change strategy to make sure that we refer to the current national positions and the council plan objectives. It doesn't change any of the fundamentals in terms of the objective to achieve net zero for our own operations by 2030 and to be resilient to the climate impacts, and to target a net zero carbon district by 2040 and a resilient district. And it doesn't change the actions in terms of those targeted at the council's own operations, those that enable in savings as a result of our policies, and those that set out to inspire and lead the community to save their own emissions. It updates the progress to reflect what we've achieved, and updates the actions in terms of such things as introducing zero emission vehicles where they are possible, as an advance from the ultra low emission vehicles that were previously referred to. So it is a reflection of how we've moved forward rather than a dramatic change to the strategy.
Great, thank you very much. And David, can you fill us in on what scrutiny felt about this?
Thank you, Chair. And we have to say thank you to Councillor Jarvis. There was quite a lot of questions and debate on this particular issue on the evening. Took us a fair bit of time. And thanks to Steve for the time he spent answering those. I think what was interesting that came out of that was that we include our main contractors' emissions as part of our target. So we don't instantly reduce them by saying that's the contractor's problem. We take them on and acknowledge that. And with that in mind, it was we adopted the recommendations to Cabinet as in the papers, but we wish to add a second recommendation that Cabinet reflects the climate change strategy for contracted service when considering revision of the procurement policy. So that was when we have our procurement policy review, that we ask our contractors to adopt the same sort of approaches as we do.
Okay, thank you. So that's not necessarily a recommendation for tonight, but that's something for us to hold when we do the procurement strategy.
It was a recommendation for tonight,
okay.
But to be taken up when we do the procurement strategy.
Yeah, are you happy to accept that one, Steve?
Yes, I think that's very sensible. I guess we just need to reflect whether or not that should be an objective in the climate change strategy, just to make sure it doesn't get forgotten, but we can do that.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to take that offline, because I'm aware you'll have to obviously consult with officers and come up with those background strategies to sit around and help make that achievable. Do colleagues have any questions? Reese?
I'm reading it, it feels a bit more ambitious than before. Am I right in thinking you say it hasn't changed much, but is it more, are we getting more ambitious?
Well, we've made quite a lot of progress in terms of assessing where we are and in terms of assessing what we need to do to get from where we are to where we want to be. In particular, we've identified what we probably need to do in terms of offsetting emissions that we can't eliminate, and that's likely to involve some measure of renewable energy generation. There are still some questions to be answered as to when and how we will achieve that. The targets themselves have not changed, but as I said, we've made some progress. So we are reflecting that progress and being clearer about how some of the steps that we will need to take in the future will have to be taken.
Okay. Any more questions? No. Okay. Well, in that case, Steve, do you want to propose this one?
I will happily propose that all the recommendations are set out.
Plus the one from overview and scrutiny.
Plus the one from overview and scrutiny, yes.
Yep.
Sorry.
And I'm happy to second that. Can we have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much, which brings me to item number 9, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy for 2022 to 2027. This was pretty much Judy's final piece of work that she did for us, and I think it is entirely right and proper that the foreword that she produced for this stands and remains included within this document going forward. As per the introduction in this forward, the progress that this council has made in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion is good. But over the course of the pandemic, over the course of subsequent issues around the cost of living and migration, we have noticed growing and further hidden inequalities, and it would not be right for us to sit back and not act and examine and think about the things that we do as a local authority to try and tackle and to reduce those inequalities. Now, I am aware that there are 39 Conservative MPs who have signed a letter recently about wokery and getting rid of equality and diversity officers in Whitehall, and I think we need to send a message loud and clear to people who have attitudes like that it's not woke to care about people and our communities. And in fact, we owe not just a duty of care, but a duty to care to our people and communities. And that's what this strategy and the things that it's working towards absolutely should help us achieve. What this policy will do is enshrine some of the projects that we have been working on recently, the things around youth engagement, for example, and local democracy. And it will ensure that everything that Judy was, and actually that we all should be passionate about, are taken care of, and that every member of our community is supported. And it puts this council in a good place to tackle those growing inequalities that result in things like poor health and well-being outcomes and poor future prospects. So I would wholly endorse this piece of work to colleagues and ask you to support the recommendations. I don't know if Jeanette's got anything further she wants to add on the technical aspects of this.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't know whether David wanted to address Cabinet first, but I was going to just mention that it was apparent from the overview and scrutiny meeting that there was some concerns were raised about certain phrases that were in the glossary, and also the recommendation, which I think Dave is going to address, which was to keep this as a live document. I would say that the officers just intended this to have a number of different phrases which they hoped would be helpful, and it certainly wasn't the intention to cause any upset within the various different communities. I think to prevent there being that sort of danger and being a distraction from the strategy, and also to prevent it becoming a work in itself for them to have to keep updating perhaps these the different phrases. It would be better, I think, to remove that the glossary from the actual strategy itself, because the only time it's referred to is just at the very end, really, within the actual strategic document, which at the back of it would be B. But I obviously will leave it to David just to explain what else, the other discussions that came up, and obviously ultimately it's a matter for members.
Lovely. Thank you, Jeanette. David.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was we supported it, the strategy itself, but there was some concerns around the glossary and the wording used, particularly at one point it referred to people of colour, see below, when referring to BME or BAME. And there was no explanation below, and some of those present felt that the use of people of colour shouldn't have been used at all in that particular part. And I think our recommendation was that subject to the amendment regarding explanation of the terms, and the glossary remains as a live document. But I think Jeanette's solution is probably a little bit better, that the glossary could never be right because things change all the time. And I think it would be, I think just Jeanette's suggestion that the glossary is removed would be better, because putting something in and then finding out it's wrong in itself and politically incorrect itself it's not a good idea.
No, I absolutely agree. I think I would very, very much support that the glossary be removed. I can pick up on another spot. LGBTQ+ can also be LGBTQIA+, and it's one of those acronyms that keeps growing, and it is usually safer to let communities and groups self-determine and identify themselves and say, this is the terminology I'm comfortable with you using when you're addressing me. So I would thank you very much for that input from Scrutiny and from Jeanette as a neat solution. I think we should take that forward. Any comments and questions from colleagues? Yes, Ruth.
I noticed it says everyone's responsible for this, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But similar to the climate emergency, we talked about it's everyone's responsibility, but have then come round to having a named officer. I can't see anything within this strategy which suggests we should have a named officer with this responsibility. I just wondered if that's been considered and why that's not in there.
I don't honestly know the answer to that. Obviously, we do have the Policy and Community Engagement Manager, Ruben Ayebu, who is the main contact who deals with it. And obviously it falls under my directorate. I mean, we do share it out. It's public sector duty that we have. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We might have a separate conversation around learning and development and awareness rollout of this as well after the meeting, but I think that's better as an offline conversation, and we might touch on named individuals or points of contact as well at that stage. Any further questions? No. In which case, I would very much like to propose that we accept this with the amendment that we will remove the glossary. Please, may I have a seconder? I see Councillor Hoskins. Thank you. Can we move to the vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item number 10, allocation of government funding for accommodation and support. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report on the allocation of government funding for accommodation and support services for single homeless people. Firstly, I want to draw Cabinet's attention to the recently added addendums, which provide an update on the recommendations for the Metropolitan Thames Valley Home Scheme and an update on the housing benefit subsidy loss regarding the Lord Lister. 2.1a. This allows Cabinet to approve funding in principle for this type of accommodation, and Cabinet can consider the details of the scheme at the appropriate time. 2.1b allows Cabinet to look at the subsidy loss issue in a more detailed way. We need to accept where we are for now, but we do need to know what options we have moving forward to ensure we mitigate any cost to the council. Key Stage have confirmed they're reviewing their options, which should help mitigate subsidy loss going forward, and this is currently under review. If there are any technical questions, then I'm happy for officers to address those once I come to the end of my report. This is a very detailed report and provides a lot of information on the need for the funding of these particular schemes. However, I do want to provide a brief summary to Cabinet as to why it is essential these recommendations are approved. This report details proposals for the allocation of this funding towards specialist services for single homeless people. As the report states, the demand for accommodation and support services for single homeless people, particularly those with complex support needs, has risen significantly over the past few years. This funding will help fund additional support for those with the most intensive support needs. It is crucial that this council help where it can to fund these specialist support services so that residents get the support they need. It will help residents to provide opportunities to live independently and ultimately help towards ending the cycle of homelessness, which will benefit the individual, the district and society as a whole. It is also worth noting that these recommendations are in line with the priorities set out in the Council's homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. This funding will help to ensure that schemes are successful and that they provide the best possible outcomes for its residents. Taking into account the amendments as detailed in the addendum, I would like to propose all recommendations as set out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Councillor Prendergast? No. In that case, Councillor Prendergast has proposed. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brown.
Happy to second.
Thank you. And James, could you move us to a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. And item number 11 is back to Councillor Prendergast for an information note on the refugee resettlements.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be relatively brief because the report is self-explanatory. However, I do want to give an overview because it is an important, very important subject area. One key bit of information from this report is that the council successfully fulfilled its commitment to resettle 10 Syrian families, including totaling 50 individuals in the district. The Syrian scheme was paused during COVID-19 pandemic, but is now resumed, and the council has sourced 2 housing association properties suitable for 2 families of 5, which are available for immediate occupation. Only 1 Syrian family has been identified by the Home Office, so the other property will be filled by an Afghan family of 5 with the support provided by the Refugee Council. In relation to the Ukrainian refugee situation, just wanted to give a brief update. Whilst there are currently a small number of approaches from Ukrainians for housing assistance, it does remain a likely source of additional pressure on the council housing services. And we have been working with other boroughs and counties to help ensure that these pressures are alleviated as much as possible, as outlined in 4.3 of the information note. One thing I do want to end on is we should be incredibly proud of the continued support and assistance we as a council have been providing to refugees and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update. Do colleagues have any questions? No. Okay. Because that was just an update, you don't have to vote. So item number 12 is the North Herts Museum Strategy 2022 to 2026. Councillor Hoskins to present, and there will be a O&S referral as well with this one. Yeah, Keith.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm very happy to propose the recommendations as set out in the report. This is the first strategy update that we've done in 10 years since the reorganisation of museum services in North Herts. It's a good and succinct piece of work. It sets out the 4 aims that the museum hopes to achieve over the course of the next few years, and I commend the officers' work for it. I think it's a very good piece of work, and it has been to overview and scrutiny, as you've already intimated.
Thank you very much. David, do you want to give us scrutiny's comments on this piece?
Yeah, just very quickly that we agreed the recommendations as before. No changes to those. Did note actually that the very good response that they had to the consultations on the museum strategy, one of the best I think we've seen on any consultations lately.
Thank you very much. There might be some learning points on engagement and how we can continue to get good consultation and engagement, so we can explore that with the comms team as well. Thank you, David. It's really good. So I think, colleagues, then any questions for Keith on this one? No. I believe Mr. Hoskins has proposed. So can I have a seconder? Councillor Albert.
Happy to second.
And can we have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. And now, item 13, Councillor Ian Albert to present the half-year report on risk management.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. And I think move the recommendations in the paper 2.1 to 2.2 and 2.3. And I think we've also got a FAR comment around this as well. Risk are now considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as part of the Council Delivery Plan. So this report allows the Finance and Audit and Risk Committee to ensure that the Council are effectively managing risk. We've been asked to consider the changes to the various risk documents as detailed in the report and Appendix D, as well as supporting FAR in their role. And I say particularly sort of commend the 2.3 here, that I think obviously the importance of risk management training, not obviously to, I think for Cabinet and for the FAR committee itself, but I think for all councillors, and we certainly would want to encourage risk management training going forward for all our colleagues. But happy to move those recommendations, and obviously take on board any points that the Chair of FAR may wish to make.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Terry, do you want to add your comments?
Yes. We had a good debate about this, and one of the things that Ian's just mentioned is training for Pentana. The FAR will be receiving some training, and hopefully it'll be extended to the rest of the community as well. One of the things we asked is resources will be investigated. Investigate why empty house strategy risk has a target to decrease its likelihood but increase its impact, was one of the things that we asked Ian to look into, which he agreed to do. This is intended a regular report twice a year. There is a quarterly risk management group during the day where members of FAR and ONS are welcome, which I've never attended yet, but I will be going forward, and hopefully my members of the right committee will be as well. The local plan is in a challenge period until the period has elapsed. The risk remains high. It will be reviewed. So that's really, we support it. We just wanted to add those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Well, didn't whether Ian Cooper had got an update on that empty homes risk yet, which may have been a typo, but you were checking, I think.
Yeah, we're pretty certain it's not right, but we just need to make sure we talk to the service managers just to confirm that. So I've spoken to our risk officer about the work that's been done, but once we've gone through all of that, we'll to send that out to FAR members to make sure that they're with that update.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from colleagues? No. And I take it Councillor Albert has proposed that and is happy with it. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, you don't push your button then.
I'm happy to
Thank
say.
you. Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. All right, can we have a vote, please, James? You pushed the wrong button.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. And now second item for Councillor Albert of the night. Item number 14, draft budget 23 to 24. There's also a FAR referral.
Just thanks, Chair. Actually, it's the third item of the night. You've already lost count of the. Well, that's possibly so. Just obviously to commend the report and the recommendations in front of you, 2.1 to 2.5, and again obviously to thank Ian Cooper and his team for all the work they've done, and indeed I think right across officers across the council for helping to bring cross-party, all the parties to the information to the budget workshop of various proposals, efficiency savings, and new ways of working that are set out in the annex. Let's say this is the first report for the 23-24 budget setting cycle, and as always with these things, it's very much a bit of a moving target, and as I'll mention in a moment, we've had letters from the Secretary, from the Secretary of State or the Minister in DLUHC yesterday. There was a webinar earlier today with some further sort of updates around the settlement. We will be giving you a more detailed report in January, which we'll be asked to approve and forward to Council in February. In this report, we're asked to whether we approve the revenue and capital proposals, as I say, that were mentioned and discussed at the budget workshops, as well as those in addition in paragraphs 8.14 onwards. We're also asked to consider the level of council tax that we should propose for next year, and the autumn statement announced that the lower tier councils would be allowed to increase their council tax by up to 3% without a local referendum, and I'll just touch on that a bit more in the moment. I mean, as in the past, it's almost certain the government will assume that we've increased our council tax by the maximum allowable in determining how much business rate funding we can retain. Therefore, to preserve our services, and I think as best we can in the future, the proposal is we do increase it by the 3%. And obviously the council tax reduction scheme that we discussed earlier on, which hopefully be approved by council in January, then we'll know at least our well-off residents will be fully protected from the increase. Now, obviously the letters we've had so far from government have also confirmed that 3% council tax increase for 23-24 will now be for 2 years. So there's a 24-25 proposal there as well. There isn't a new funding formula yet, or a business rate reset in the next 2 years. And so I think we're looking really at the next Parliament for that. And then on the whole, that's, I think, probably good news for us, as we can retain business rate pools, which have been a benefit to us, continuing to eliminate the negative RSG that's been a bane, I think, of this administration and the previous one for much period. And clearly the headline on grants is that all councils will see at least 3% increase in core spending power before making a decision on increasing council tax. So I think the key there is that we do actually take up that 3% council tax flexibility in 24-25. Ultimately, we will need to use the flexibility as it then is something we control, unlike grants, which can be taken away. But I think it's also worth just reminding colleagues here that whilst obviously that 3% increase, I think is welcome in terms of our income, we do recognise that there is a real issue for residents here that are already hard pressed. And I think it's important that we obviously take that into account in our considerations. But it's also true to say is that actually, even despite that, we'll be having to use up around £1 million of our reserves, and better than we were expecting, but that's still a lot of money. Once it's gone, it's gone. I think the other thing that we will look to make a proposal on, and I think it's important to actually, I think, assuring our residents that we are, as always, and this administration seeks to get the best value and is prudent in all its assumptions, but also the importance of actually seeing how we can best use that money to help our residents. And certainly I'll be looking maybe to come further with some perhaps a further proposal around a sort of community wealth fund from at least some of that increase that we get in 23-24, and that's something we will look to work up and come back to cabinet and full council later on. I think the final thing to say here is that always that we will continue to make sure that we make best value for services. I've said that now, and I can't stress that further. These are difficult times for our residents, but we think actually the services that we're providing here, and whether it's just actually looking at our waste, our leisure services, our waste services and recycling, but also the other things that we do, in around the community and the community grants that we make, I think are of value, and actually something that we can actually, I think, can be rightly proud of. The museum that we talked about with that Keith Hoskins mentioned earlier on, which I think again is something that this council can be rightly proud of, and our residents can be rightly proud of. So in all our things here, that we don't do these things lightly. We don't actually want to see, we would prefer not to see to make increases in council tax, but it is, I think, important actually to maintain the kind of important services that we think our residents value and actually need in the coming year, and actually that is a real benefit, I think to them and to our communities. So I commend this budget to you. It's obviously there will be further detail to come when we see the final local government settlement. It is very much a sort of a work in progress here, but as I recommend those things in front of you today, to recommendations 2.1 to 2.5 to cabinet, and then obviously we'll bring a further report to our next meeting.
Thank you very much, Ian. I think that was certainly much more informative than the webinar that we had with ministers and civil servants this morning. And I think it was certainly much more realistic around the use of the 3% and the impact that it's going to have, which government seems not to have fully appreciated at this particular point in time. But we'll see what happens post-consultation when we get the final funding settlement. Terry, do you have some points from Finance, Audit and Risk on this?
Yes, Chair. We fully support the budget as presented. We had quite a debate about it, and Ian Cooper gave us some much needed detail on what's going on. We recommend to Cabinet to note that the latest funding forecasts 23-24 onwards, and the significant uncertainty it still remains, which we just highlighted there. We don't know exactly how the budget's going to how the finances are going to move and what funds we're going to receive. So it's really can make it pretty difficult. We confirmed that it's necessary to increase. The FAR confirms it's necessary to increase the council tax by 3%, which is the maximum amount allowed. So there's not much more to be said about that. I think Ian's really covered a lot of that. And we're assuming in the government determining the business rates that the council will still can retain some of it. We confirmed that the council should be part of the business rate pool in 2023-24, but delegate to the service director resources in consultation with the executive member of Finance and IT Authority to withdraw from the pooling arrangement if there are significant changes that would make it likely that the council would suffer financially loss from the pooling. Item number 4, we noted the comments made by the budget workshops and the comments of the inclusion of the revenue saving and investments in the budget to be brought back for consideration in January for referral to the council in February. And finally, we note that the comments made at the budget workshops and the comments on the inclusion of the capital investments and the investment strategy to be brought back to consideration in January for a referral to the council in February. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, debate? Steve.
Thank you. I mean, first, I'm very pleased that we've got added into the proposals the funding to extend the opening at Letchworth Outdoor Pool. The extended opening we did this year was a real success with the people who want to swim outdoors other than in the height of the summer. I think identified some ways in which we can do more than we originally anticipated with the funding for that. So I think that's really good news. I'm hoping in the longer term we can find ways to expand outdoor swimming. Maybe that's the wrong word. Expand the time for outdoor swimming even further. So I'm very pleased that that proposal has now been added. I think in terms of the council tax, I mean, clearly nobody likes paying more council tax, but I think we have to recognise that councils that have not increased council tax when there was a serious need to, like Northamptonshire, have just got themselves into a position where they aren't able to provide the services that people need, and it's inevitably the most vulnerable members of society that are impacted most by that. So whereas one would clearly wish that the rate of inflation was much lower and there was no need to put council tax up by a significant amount, I think in the circumstances there is no realistic alternative but to go with what the government is assuming we will do.
Yeah, I am very much minded to agree, and it was very clear on the call that we had today. Well, it was we were outright told that the government is assuming that councils will increase by 3%, and they are basing the rest of their funding and support for the local government sector on us all increasing by the maximum that they're permitting us. And if we're not prepared to do that, then as indicated, we will need to start using our reserves, and those reserves are there not just to keep us ticking over, but to fund certain large projects that we might have and to deliver additional benefit, or to really bail us out in a rainy day should we have a severe adverse situation. I think it's quite wrong that government is almost putting local authorities into this position in the middle of a cost of living crisis. But what is really positive is the indication that our members and officers are starting to think about ways that we can continue to deliver community benefit, even though we're having to increase tax. And this concept of a community wealth fund that Ian spoke about is something that, once it's fleshed out, will be quite interesting and hopefully really positive to see. So if we are having to tax our residents more because government still refuses to fund local government properly, then I very much implore colleagues to be wise with your spending and to always consider the added community benefit and put people first as per this council's priorities. Soapbox done. Any more questions? I believe that the recommendations for this have been proposed. I will happily second those. Can we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Item 15, compliance contract, community buildings. Councillor Albert.
Just thanks, Chair. Again, obviously the recommendations in front of you, 2.1 and 2.2 in the paper. I think as colleagues will know, across the district, we have a number of community buildings that are leased out to enable the best use of those buildings by the local community. Now, whilst the focus is on community use, there's also generally the option to support that with income from other sources. We're not required to do so, but we continue to provide various repairs, maintenance and servicing to these buildings, although in some cases the costs are charged back to the lessee. Some of these required a trained professional to carry out, but we've identified a series of monthly checks that don't require any professional knowledge or equipment. In order to manage our costs and reduce the contractor mileage and therefore carbon emissions, we're proposing to stop providing these monthly checks. All the other tasks that require professional skills will continue to be provided. We've undertaken consultation with the community groups. We've also consulted local ward councillors, and the community groups that lease those buildings, and indeed the results of those are detailed in the report alongside the full details of what's being proposed. Additionally, we will obviously provide any training to the community groups need. We'll obviously work with them about any sort of training requirements, and obviously any reporting requirements we'll work up. So I commend this report to you around the new compliance contract, and I think it's hopefully the Cabinet will agree that and the two recommendations contained therein.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No. Or is that a question? No. Okay.
I just wanted to say that obviously the community centres were all consulted about this, and some of them did have some queries. I was asked by Coombs in Royston to meet with them because they had significant concerns, and following discussion with me and with Ian Cooper and Ian Albert, those concerns, I think they've been largely reassured. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. I think having spoken to my community centres, the same process has been followed. So thank you to both Ians for their work and engagement positively with the committees at our community centre. It's helped us sort of get people to move forward together in a happier space. Okay, in that case, I take it that the item has been proposed. Could I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you. And can we have a vote, please, James? Oh, shit. Thank you very
Chair,
much.
that motion's carried.
Thank you. Item number 16 is the compliance contract single tender. Councillor Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And again, obviously asking Cabinet to approve the use of a single tender, as in our recommendation 2.1. It's probably helpful to start by saying that the building works that are currently contracted out by the council as a compliance contract are very varied. And if the decision on the last item had been that the council should carry on providing the monthly checks, these would not have formed part of the new overall contract and would have been let as a smaller contract. The revised compliance contract will focus on building works such as repairs and maintenance. As detailed in the report, we've had some issues with this contract in the past, so we did some market engagement hoping to be told what contractors would be looking for. However, the result was generally being told that the contract wasn't very attractive. However, it did lead to a discussion with HTS, a company that is wholly owned by Harlow Council. To avoid a likely repeat of the previous contracts, we continue that into a negotiation of what a contract could look like, and also benchmarking those proposals to ensure that they offered value for money. The end result is a proposal that is expected to provide incentives for us and HTS, and therefore a single tender is proposed. This is in accordance with the council's financial regulations, but has been referred to Cabinet due to the contract value. So the details in the report, and I do commend recommendation 2.1 to you that we agree to the use of a single tender for the award of a contract to HTS Property and an Environmental Limited for a property compliance contract. I move, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Nope. I see that's been proposed. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, Sean.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. And can we have a vote, James?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you. And item number 17, CCTV camera location review. Councillor Albert.
It's a lot of papers this evening. And obviously a lot of work has gone into this, and this work started with a discussion in a budget review meeting that we should understand where we spend money on CCTV and ensure that it offers value for money. To ensure that we understand the benefits of where the cameras are located, the initial work included input from the police, CCTV control room, and the council's community safety team. Towards the end of that process, we were notified by the Letchworth Garden City Heritage Foundation that they were going to stop funding CCTV cameras. The review was therefore extended to consider those cameras too. The CCTV control room team I've started to consider ways to keep ongoing costs under control by using more modern camera technology. If these recommendations are approved, then this will be progressed. Costs are also affected by what the other partners do and how well the company is performing. Therefore, the revenue costs of new mobile cameras and therefore how many can afford it will only be known once that work is completed. But I think one of the key things that we did determine out of that is, I think, the importance of actually having a stock of mobile cameras, and in many ways they actually, I think, provide that additional sort of flexibility that just sticking a camera on a pole for the next 5 years doesn't give you. So I think that is an important part of our strategy. So I think we've got some number of recommendations there in front of you, Chair, 2.1 to 2.4, and I would commend those recommendations to Cabinet.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Keith.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. In that case, could we stick it on a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you. And now item number 18 is the second quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury review 2022-2023. Councillor Albert to present, and I believe we've also got a FAR referral on this one as well.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And obviously the recommendations here again in front of you, 2.1 to 2.4, that we'll obviously, as this is the mid-year report, we'll obviously recommend it that we refer us onto full council in January to keep them informed of the position on treasury management. I think you'll note table 2 in the paper details the capital schemes that are proposed to slip into next year. Table 3 helps to highlight the emerging picture of inflation on building works. The slippage on capital schemes and increases in interest rate mean the council is generating greater returns on its surplus cash, and you can see that in the executive summary. Obviously, the report is quite a long and extended one, but I don't think there's anything particularly else that I wanted to cover this evening. But obviously, happy to pick up, and obviously Ian Cooper's here to pick up any further sort of technical questions that colleagues might have, and make those recommendations again. Chair, 2.1 to 2.4, commend those to Cabinet, and then on to full council where appropriate.
Thank you very much. Terry, do you want to add your comments?
Yes, Chair. The FAR committee wanted to note the forecast expenditure of 9.1. I can't say this one. Let's try again. 9.815 million in 22-23 on the capital programme, which 8.3 refers to. We wanted to approve the adjustments to the capital programme of 22-23 onwards as a result of the revised timetable of schemes detailed in table 2 and 3, increases in estimated spend in 23-24 by 0.861 million and 2 million in 24-25. We wanted to note the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in table 4, paragraph 8.6, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. And for the recommendations for the council to note that the position of the treasury management activity at the end of September 22. The reasons for our decision is the Cabinet is required to approve adjustments to the capital programme and ensure that the capital programme is fully funded. To ensure the council continues to compliance with CIFA, Code of Practice on Treasury Management and Local Government Act 2003, and the council manages its exposure to interest and capital risk. The report considered by Finance, Audit and Risk Committee that they held on the meeting of 7th of December. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions or comments? No. I see that the report's been proposed. Can I have a seconder, please? I will second it then if nobody else wants to. There we go. Seconded. Can I have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item number 19, Q2 update on the Council Delivery Plan 2022-2023. Ian Albert.
Thanks, Chair. And I think and I know we're obviously getting through the agenda, and I can feel the coldness in the room seeping into the bones here, if I'm there. But one of the things is this is a really important document. Not that the other ones that I have been moving weren't, but this is a really important document, which I think actually obviously commend to and the recommendations to cabinet colleagues, and indeed I think the importance obviously of commending this particular document to all councillors, because I think it is whilst obviously it would say reviewed through the overview and scrutiny committee, obviously it does enable councillors to see what are our key projects and how those projects are progressing, and how we're doing against each of these key council projects. I think it was really helpful following feedback from overview and scrutiny committee that this version now includes more information on project milestones. So I think it's easier for anyone to look at this report and see what's been done and how we're progressing. So here's the second quarter update. We'll try to make this document as live as possible. So generally, it's the position at mid-November. So I think certainly for I'd hope in future meetings that also to say to sort of cabinet colleagues that that where there are things that are happening in their area, this will obviously is an opportunity for them maybe at sort of future meetings also to comment or indeed add their view on the way things are progressing against these particular sort of milestones, because I think it's a really important document for this cabinet to take ownership of. And as I say, we certainly welcome the feedback from colleagues on overview and scrutiny about this, because I think that's obviously a vital part of the process as well. So really obviously to commend the report to you. Obviously there's two recommendations in front of you there, that we note the progress against the council projects as set out in the council delivery plan, Appendix A, including the changes to milestone data and dates and risk, and notes obviously the important thing that we notes the completion of the local plan milestones for this year. So commend those recommendations to you, Chair, and obviously we can happy to have a discussion. And I'm not sure. Obviously, David might have any comments from the overview and scrutiny.
I'm sure David will have comments. I remember how Catherine and I felt about this document in the past, so your views welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yes, it's nice to see it. It's the second time we've seen this, but with the tweaks we've added in this time, I think it's a really good way of showing the overall progress. It's quite graphic. Picture paints 1,000 words, as they say, and it's very easy to see everything in one place on here. We note the changes, and we note finally that the local plan, after 5 years of submission, has reached that milestone. Of course, it's still within the 6-week judicial review period, I think, where we can have a judicial review, so we can't knock it off the list yet, but hopefully, next time around we'll see that gone. But I'm sure that will bring a new set of risks to be relating to the local plan. And I think the particular one we discussed at overview scrutiny was looking at those developments that come forward, proposals for developments that are not within the local plan, and for sites outside the allocated local plan sites. So I think that's something we may be seeing in the future, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions or comments from colleagues? Nope. In that case, can I have a seconder, please? Amy's waving at me. Yep.
Just try and warm up. Happen to second.
Thank you very much. Can we have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Item number 20. Second quarter revenue budget monitoring 2022-2023. Councillor Albert to present.
Thanks Chair, and again obviously obviously thanks obviously to Ian and obviously finance team for this report. And there's sort of 4 recommendations in front of you there, 2.1 to 2.4, and obviously commend those to you. Table 3 highlights the major changes since the last quarter. The main positive movements are the increase in Treasury investment income and the continued recovery in the use of our leisure centres. Although clearly the increase in Treasury investment income comes at the other side of the coin, is that's because of high inflation and so on, but which is clearly a rather detriment to that. And clearly the main negative movement is the forecast drop in planning income that we touched on earlier. Under the Council's financial regulations, Cabinet are required to approve the write-off debts that are more than 10,000. Table 8 details 4 debts which are requested to be written off and the reasons. And paragraph 8.17 details that is not expected to be an impact on the general fund for those things. So there's, say, 4 recommendations in front of you, Chair, and I commend those to Cabinet.
Thank you. I've also got a referral from Finance, Audit and Risk on this. Do you want to add any comments, Terry?
Yes, Chair. We'd like to, FAR would like to note this report. We fully support it. We wanted to approve the changes to 22-23 budget, a general fund budget, as identified in Table 3 in paragraph 8.2, a £270,000 decrease in net expenditure. And finally, note the changes to 23-24 general fund budget as identified in Table 3, 8.2, of a total of 69k increase in net expenditure. And this will be incorporated in draft revenue for 23-24. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Nope. Okay, the item's been proposed. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor Jarvis. Please may I have a vote, James?
Chair, that motion's been carried.
Right. Thank you very much. Which brings us on to item 21, which is the exclusion of the press and public. I will now read out the formal thing that we always have to read out. I would like to propose that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. Please can I have a seconder, Councillor Brown? And
a second.
Can I have a vote, please, James?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried. If you can just give us a couple of minutes while we move into Part 2. Thank you, Chair. So we should now be back in part one. And just to confirm that the officers have returned with us. So we have Anthony Roach.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you. David Martins-Hess.
Yes, I'm present.
Thanks, David. And Joe Duffsey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Item 23 is the Careline in-house provision for complex installation and maintenance. As members are aware, we previously brought part of the Careline service back in-house, and we're now bringing the complex installation and maintenance aspect back in-house as well. Careline's been contracted since 2014 externally. But we felt that, and having carried out various pieces of research, it just made a bit more sense in terms of the finance and better service to our customers if we provided that in-house service provision, and it makes sense for the whole contract to be in-house. So the recommendation in this report is that Cabinet approves the addition of complex installations and maintenance to Careline's in-house services with effect from the 1st of April 2023. Any comments or questions? Councillor Albert.
Happy, Chair, to both second and welcome this approach fully.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else indicate, can we have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this evening's meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. The next Cabinet meeting will be on the 31st of January, 2023. If I don't see you before, have a good Christmas, although I expect I should see every single one of you on Monday. Bye.